The Minnesota Vikings have just dropped a bombshell update, and you need to hear this. But before we get into this major development, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the latest Vikings updates. Trust me, this offseason is heating up, and you won't want to be left behind. All right, let's dive in. In his first year as general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah made it clear he prefers to build a sustainable contender rather than going all in for a short-term push, like the Rams did. But here's the dilemma. The Vikings just came off a 14-win season, and Sam Darnold was a huge reason why. So now, the biggest question of the offseason is this. Should the Vikings re-sign Darnold or let him walk in free agency? This decision will set the tone for the team's entire roster strategy moving forward. Minnesota could create immediate cap space, bring back Darnold, and push for a Super Bowl run right now. But that would mean completely abandoning their original long-term plans centered around J.J. McCarthy. Dan Graziano from ESPN recently analyzed the Vikings cap situation and pointed out just how massive a commitment to Darnold would be. The cap numbers for J.J. McCarthy over the next 3 years are roughly $5 million, $6 million, and $7 million. That's an absolute steal if he becomes a solid NFL starter, which the Vikings clearly believed when they took him 10th overall in last year's draft. Graziano wrote on February 19th. Meanwhile, franchise tagging Darnold this year and again next year would cost the Vikings $40 million in 2025 and $48 million in 2026. Even a team-friendly 3-year, $125 million deal, similar to what Baker Mayfield signed with the Bucs, would still put his 2026 cap hit at around $28 million or more. And that's the best-case scenario, considering Darnold's expected market value. To make things even more complicated, the Vikings' contract with Justin Jefferson includes massive cap hits of $39 million in 2026 and $43.5 million in 2027. This means Minnesota needs financial flexibility elsewhere, which a Darnold deal could make nearly impossible. Graziano pointed out that committing to Darnold wouldn't just scrap their plans for McCarthy. It could shake up their entire roster-building strategy. Bringing Darnold back would be a seismic shift for the Vikings, not just for McCarthy, but for their entire team structure. That's not to say they won't do it or shouldn't, given the season he just had. But it would be a dramatic departure from their plan last summer. Head coach Kevin O'Connell acknowledged the situation during his Super Bowl media session, stating that Darnold has earned the right to test free agency. Just like they did with Kirk Cousins last year, the Vikings appear ready to stand their ground and see how the market unfolds. They want Darnold back, but only on their terms. And here's the wild card. Nearly a dozen teams are desperate for a quarterback in an offseason thin on QB talent. That means there's a very real chance Darnold gets a massive offer elsewhere, making a Minnesota return far from a guarantee. Last year, the Vikings were willing to gamble by letting Cousins walk. Now they seem ready to do the same with Darnold. So now we turn it over to you. Should the Vikings go all in on Darnold and scrap their long-term plan? Or should they stick to the blueprint and roll with McCarthy? Let us know in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you stay ahead of every Vikings update. This offseason is just getting started, and we'll be here to break it all down for you. Stay tuned.